and I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, and everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
Welcome to the Chefs and Pucks podcast. Calmness is like the Canucks are winning, but I still don't think the Canucks fan base is calm. But
Canucks Twitter will Canucks Twitter.
Ever calm? Yeah.
But yes, we got a three-person podcast tonight. We got Tyler. How you doing, Tyler?
Hey guys, I'm doing all right. Trying out some new technology. I got last time I was on different laptop. Got that all figured out now. I'm going with the earbud routes. I'm moving forward with technology. No more headset here, but it's a little bit weird. I don't have this cord to play with anymore. I don't know what to do with my hands. Exactly.
And then the guy who always says time is a construct. You give him a second, he'll take a minute. Chris is here. How you doing, Chris?
Time is relative, folks. I knew that would come in handy at some point on the road.
And well, what did I say, Tyler? Last podcast we were on, I said that the Canucks, a good road trip would be a 3-1 road trip. What did they do? 3-1.
Yeah, and Sean will make sure to get credit for it.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's.
I mean, I remember making that comment and just seeing the little bit look on your face, going, well, maybe 2-2, like 3-1.
I could have lived with 2-2. Yeah.
Especially when they started that in Tampa. So.
Yeah, it got me thinking. Like back in the day when there wasn't podcasts and. Teams might get off to a slow start. I mean, there was never panicking over 2 games, was there? I mean, did you have people calling into the radio call-in shows back then when that was the way that used to be? That melting down over a couple of overtime losses or going 0-3 even. Like they're just I don't know. It just. There wasn't that hypersensitivity to every result that we seem to have nowadays, but inevitably there's a correction with the good teams. They're just too good not to start to figure it out.
There's an amplification of all the irrational thoughts that you get, especially with social media. I think it's not. I don't think it's necessarily the all the radio shows, the podcasts, and all that. I feel like it's more the social media because it's so easy just to type out like an irrational thought, hit send and see what happens. So.
That and the ease of being overwhelmed in the age of like infinite information and everyone having an opinion on some of it.
Yeah.
Yes. And feeling like you have to have an opinion on everything, right?
That too, yeah.
You have to share it. So
everyone must know what I think about everything.
Well, it was 2 days ago. I said, hockey season's back when everyone and their mother are talking and making sure everyone knows their opinion on a controversial hit.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jacob Trouba, for really, really starting the NHL season properly with a controversial hit on Justin Barron. Hopefully he's okay, but it's just it's always interesting when that, like, especially the first one comes, because you get what the rules actually are, what everyone want, or what they want the rules to be, what the IHF rules are, which always confuses people. especially with hits to the head. That can always throw people for a loop. So it's always fun to just throw that mess in there, let alone everything else that happens with whether or not there's fighting in practices or whatever.
You said you weren't going to go there, Sean. You said you weren't going to go there.
I mean, I feel like we have to touch on it a little bit, and we will when we talk about PD. But it's not spoiler alert. It's not a big deal. So
no.
I think the way to start this off, first off, is to congratulate Tyler Myers on 1,000 games played.
Yes.
The Chaos Giraffe has survived 1,000 games.
Well, and you use that word "survived," affectionately, but really, I mean that is part of how difficult it is to get to 1,000 games. You got to have that.
You have to grind.
Some players can sort of length of career start to end on the calendar, play for a long time, but to be able to do 1,000 games within that period of time, yes, you got to be quite the warrior and play through a lot of bumps and bruises and stretches where you're underperforming and struggling, and so to get to that feat is a worthwhile accomplishment, and congratulations to Mr. Myers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other way, the next stop is who's been the star of the Canucks to start this season, especially on that road trip. It's got to be Kevin Lankinen, right?
Him and Garland. But Lankinen. I mean, it's thankfully they made that move, right? Can you imagine if they were just all in on Shilovs here at this point, and there wasn't the safety net / security of a more experienced goalie in Kevin Lankinen. Good for him. Obviously, it's Canucks are not going to want to go the whole season like this, but he's getting them through it so far.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Tyler on that one. I would have said both Garland and Lankinen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's time that they ride Lankinen here. Ride the hot hand, not start Shilovs, because I think he has shown he's played well in spurts, just he hasn't put together a full game yet where he's played well. He needs you need him to be able to spell off Lankinen until Demko comes back. So it's but yeah, the Canucks having the confidence that they could outweigh Lankinen's asking, his asking price, and get him for as cheap as they did, looks really, really good now. So I think it is definitely time to sort of Lankinen is the 1A or even just the de facto starter right now while Demko's out. Until Shilovs can find his game, and then you can maybe go a little bit more tandem. But at this point, it's Lankinen's net for the foreseeable future. And then let's go right into Garland, who has just been the fixer now. Like, he goes on. Him and Höglander are now Petey's wingers, and they're creating offense, and they put him on the power play, and that power play went 2 for 3 in the last game. So he's I think I heard someone call him Tocchet's teacher's pet, and
could be.
I can't disagree.
Well, the whole thing with the power play, the whole thing with the power play has you wondering, why didn't they try this sooner? But nice to have some new ideas to try it out. And it's just this time last year again, there was that speculation about whether his agent was looking into other possibilities for his client, and would he be traded? Was he happy? I mean, God, that just seems so silly now to think back to that.
For sure. And go ahead, John.
No, go.
Okay. I was going to say, when I was on with Sean earlier in the preseason and whatnot, we were talking about the versatility of the forward lines for the Canucks this season, and just the fact that you can put DeBrusque on the first line and then have Höglander and Garland on Petey's line. And then when Dakota comes back, like you could put him on a line probably with Sherwood, and like, sure, it's vastly different from what it was last season, but it could be just as successful. Who knows?
Well, even you got Danton Heinen, who put up 2 goals against Chicago in the last game as well, right?
Yep, true.
And you could potentially, like, you can ease Joshua in because of how, you got Garland and Höglander on the line with Petey. That third line with Bluger and Heinen and Sherwood has looked really good as well. And I remember going back to conversations we've had previously as well, as I talked about how you could have a bottom 6 that has 2 lines that can sort of dominate and control the game the way the third line of Garland's Joshua and Bluger, Suter, Lindholm did last year. Because you've got that, like we talk about, even if once Petey gets going and you end up knocking Garland down to that third line and you just reunite Bluger, Joshua, and Garland, you already know that Heinen and Sherwood work well together. You could put Suter in the middle of that line, and boom, there's basically another third line there. So the flexibility of moving wingers around for Rick Tocchet is fantastic, and that was one of the strengths going into the season that I expected to see. So
sneaky great forward depth for sure.
Yeah, going back to Garland, he plays so much bigger than he is too, right?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
I think there's a clip going around that like he's listed at 5'11". He's like, yeah, no.
Oh, that's silly.
Like 5'8", 5'9".
Yeah. Yeah, that
doesn't 5'11", then I'm Chara's height.
Yeah, that's just silly. Nobody's buying that.
Yeah.
And for the record,
it's like every especially during sort of once you get up into sort of the fringes of junior and in the draft year, the heights can get a little inflated. Even if it's just 1 inch. 6 foot sounds better than 5'11". Just ask Devin.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and if you're somebody that's 6 foot, if you see I'm like 6'1.5", I'm just a shade under 6'1". That makes you seem so much more than just right at 6, doesn't it?
But when you're 5'8", 5'9", you play like you're 6 foot.
Yes,
like it's just
yeah.
It makes a huge and Höglander's got a little bit of that, and I actually like that those two are paired up, because in 2, 3, 4 years time, there's a good chance Garland's not with the Canucks, and Höglander could take over that role of being the spark plug player who can control the game and drive a line.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they're both relatively undersized as well, yeah.
I think Hoagie's got 1 or 2 inches on Garland, but
not by much though. Like Hoagie's a small guy.
They're both built like fire hydrants.
Short but stocky.
Well, and then you know with Garland, you look at his size and how
I'm a fire hydrant.
Yes. Garland, back to Garland. With his size, his stick handling, his shiftiness, that just makes him extra irritating to play against. I mean, I watch him when that's what I think about all the time. If he's on the other team, I mean, this is going to just drive me nuts. And it's very valuable too. Like towards the end of the game in Chicago, the way he would just take the puck by himself, go into the corner, pivot, go back up the half wall, pivot again. He did it like 3 or 4 times and ate up 20 seconds on his own. You don't see a lot of that anymore.
No, he's definitely and that's
why
I like that he's paired with Höglander, because that's something that Höglander can learn to do, because they both have that peskiness, they both have that the willingness to go into the hard areas. It's knowing what you can do with the puck and when is what Hoagie needs to learn. and Garland has figured that out, especially under Tocchet.
Yeah.
It's a great like mentor and student sort of relationship that they have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then speaking of pests, the Canucks have a new one in Kiefer Sherwood.
Yes.
That scrum in the corner with Konecny was pretty great in the Flyers game.
And then they needed someone to step up to Konecny, because remember in the was it, pretty sure it was the second game of the year, Konecny was taking runs, and you need someone to step up, and even if it's not fighting, just make sure that he knows that someone's watching him, and he needs to cool it a little bit. And sometimes sometimes it's dropping the mitts, sometimes it's just giving him a taste of their own medicine.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of connection in between like him and like a Darcy Hordachuk when he was on the Canucks. Obviously less scraps, but like that like just pain in the ass, gets under your skin, drives you crazy to the point where you want to fight him, sort of play.
Darcy Hordachuk, that is a pull. That is a pull. Yeah, and Sherwood's
long time there.
Sherwood's definitely endearing himself to the fan base quite quickly with all of that too. That's people love that guy that'll go to bat for whoever on your team.
But that's exactly why they got him. They knew he was that player again in that series against Nashville.
Yep.
I mean, Quinn Hughes basically said, "Go get a player like Kiefer Sherwood," and they're like, "Well, we'll just go get him."
Looks like Nashville's not signing him. We'll do it. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's got.
Yeah, throw in your goalie too.
Like he had 12 hits against Chicago. He had 10 against Florida and 9 against Philly. Like he's not
isn't he leading the league in hits right now?
He is, yeah.
And I think it's not even close to like by like 10 or a dozen.
And last year Dakota Joshua was up there too. Like, so you're gonna you get those two in the lineup at the same time. Like the Canucks bottom 6 is going to be a pain in the ass to play against, and that's what you want.
Do the Canucks have the Bash brothers?
Don't
yes, it's Garland and Hoglander.
Don't make me do the calm down with that thing, okay? We're 6 games into the season. Six games into the season.
Tyler, don't be a given. We like fun here.
Well, I mean, I like fun too. I just like realistic fun.
Chris brings the fun. You bring the hair. I bring the beard. Chris brings the fun.
Yes. I just got a cut today, by the way. So I had to work at it a little bit. Get all coiffed up nicely for you guys.
Yeah. And then the guy in the middle of all this is Teddy Bluger, who was such a key cog for the Canucks last year, and then it got bumped down to the 4th line when they acquired Elias Lindholm, and he gets put back right in the center of the 3rd line again, with 2 different line mates now, with Sherwood and Heinen as of right now. But he continues to just help produce and help make that 3rd line such a key for the Canucks' success. And I don't think he gets enough credit for what he's done for the Canucks since arriving last year.
Yeah, that's probably fair to say.
Yep.
Depth, right?
Yep,
and that's he's a big part of that. And you don't have as much of that on your team. It's going to be a problem once injuries come up.
Yeah,
like I was saying earlier, it's just that sneaky forward depth that it makes kind of all 4 lines feel like a form of a Swiss Army knife, where you can mix and match with any wingers on each line, because you have the center depth that kind of stabilizes all the lines.
Yeah, and if you're the coach and you're lacking that, then there's only so much you can do. You can't coach a team that you don't have, right? I mean, you got to coach the team that you do have, And if you're limited with lineup options, then it becomes you're into motivational tactics and other stuff that has limitations on it, shall we say. There's only so much that you're going to get through that route of coaching.
The center depth that the Canucks have now is really something that we haven't seen in a while. Mm-hmm. They got Atu Ratu, who made the team out of camp. I wouldn't say he was out of place in the few games that he played with the Canucks, and then got sent back down to Abbey. But if one of the centers goes down, I don't think the Canucks are going to be too worried about bringing him up and slotting him into a third or fourth line role. So that's really nice as well. So, and then
the convenience of being able to ease people in is definitely a nice convenience to have for sure.
Yeah. And then speaking of someone who got called up from Abbotsford, you've got Eric Brandstrom, or as I guess Ottawa was calling him for the longest time, the Branchise.
The Branchise. That's okay.
Unfortunately, that Brandstrom was the big piece that they got in the Mark Stone trade, and there's a lot of pressure put on him. And you can see why. He skates well. He can move the puck well.
You can see the promise. Yeah.
You can see the promise, but there's still some polishing, especially defensively, that needs to happen. And he's an undersized defenseman. So when they made the trade to acquire him and get off Tucker Pullman's contract, I was very interested to see what the Canucks would do with him, because it was just one of those, it just felt like they had to take a contract back.
Yeah.
Just for contract slotting purposes. But it was like I said, it was an interesting one, because you could see where they, especially in the AHL, I feel like having him in the AHL and Quinn Hughes in the NHL, you have two guys who can very much drive the play with their puck moving abilities. But in his few games with the Canucks on this road trip, he's looked solid. He hasn't been trying to do too much. He's been playing a quiet game, and that's actually what I think you want to see from him. And then and it continues just to build the confidence. And I think it's something he needs to continue to build down in Abbotsford, and maybe potentially be a later season sort of depth to the roster, because especially when you want something you want some more puck moving ability, because outside of the Quinn Hughes and Philip Bronick pairing right now, has not played as well as I think everyone was hoping and expecting. And then the third pair has been a bit of an adventure at times. So you've got Quinn Hughes in the trees, and it still leaves a little bit of, you still want a little bit more just steady ability to move the puck up the ice when Quinn Hughes isn't on the ice. And then if Brandstrom can continue to develop and play like that, there might be something there.
Do you think that there's a decent possibility he might be like the replacement for Juleson come like February and March?
I think post deadline, I wouldn't be surprised if the Canucks have, if they can make it work cap wise. And depending on what
their big move is a puck moving third, fourth.
Depending on what the moves are. But because I don't see the Canucks exposing Juleson to waivers, at least at this point.
That would be very disappointing if it got to that point. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. And it's not that he's a perfect 6'7" defenseman, and Juleson is. But I think there's still some development to go with Desharnais. There's still some development to go with Brandstrom. Forbert has looked solid for the most part. But it's just there's a limiting factor on puck moving abilities when you, especially on that bottom pair. I feel like Soucy and Myers can play better than they've shown, and you'll see some more puck moving out of both of them. But that bottom pair, if it's Forbert and Juleson or Forbert and Desharnais, there needs to be some development from one of those players to feel like you're comfortable taking that pair into the stretch run and hopefully the playoffs with them there. And Brandstrom, again, undersized defenseman. Yeah, he skates beautifully, can move the puck well, but can he hold up to the rigors of that as well? So
Yeah.
It's tough because, like I said, you see the promise, you see he could be maybe he's one of those players where the way I've seen the NHL go, especially on the blue line, is that you're seeing there's room for one true puck mover on the blue line, and then everything else needs to be more all rounders or pure defensive defensemen.
Yeah,
and I think the Canucks need just one more all rounder who can be a steady puck mover and that can slide into that second pair. So I don't necessarily see a long-term fit for Brandstrom, but maybe they can turn him into a trade chip that's a piece in a trade or something like that.
Absolutely. And I think so far he's, we've talked about the promise. He hasn't disappointed me so far. So, with all due respect to Eric, we have some high hopes for here, but I think his Canucks career has gotten off to as good a start as he could probably hope for, and hopefully when he gets a recall again, he'll be able to continue to push that forward.
And yeah, if he ends up being a trade chip, then I imagine on a relatively weaker team, he could have a more legitimate chance to crack an NHL lineup. It's just that the past two teams he's been on has been more of a playoff type team, and those lineups are harder to crack.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Well, Ottawa was just the problem with Ottawa is that they already had. He got passed pretty quickly in the depth chart. They already had Thomas Chabot, and then they brought in Sanderson. So it's just he lost his spot to a couple higher end bigger defensemen. And then we went to Colorado. It was an interesting idea, but it just didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And Colorado and Vancouver worked a deal that was basically more salary cap related than anything else.
Absolutely.
But the Canucks got a piece that's and a player that could be good depth. But like I said, if he's not a trade chip, I definitely see him being sort of the eighth defenseman for the Canucks. Post deadline when the 23-man roster limit goes away, as long as they can work the cap that way. So, but he's looked good, and I think getting him as opposed to another player may turn out to be a stroke of genius for Alvin and the management team.
Yeah, and it's worth a try too, because they've had some other depth on defense. Like a name like Guillaume Brisebois comes to mind, where they've tried to take what was probably a career minor league player and give him another opportunity and see if he can run with it, and it just hasn't been working. So we'll see what Eric Brandstrom can offer as a change of scenery for him, as we've talked about coming out of Ottawa. Maybe the spotlight's off him a little bit. I know it's odd to say going to another Canadian market as intense as Vancouver can be, but that was worth a shot for both men and the team, and hopefully there'll be more positive than negative here down the next little while.
Yep. All right, and then I guess it's time. Let's tackle the elephant in the room.
Oh yes,
the play of Elias Pettersson.
Yeah.
I thought he's looked better the last couple games. I think we talked about how Garland's helped drive play with that line, and I think you're starting to see some more confidence come back from Petey. And I think it's something I think people need to remember, that it's not like he can flip a switch, especially when you're in a funk the way Pettersson has been. Like if you look at that one stat,
he's a
where
cerebral type player too.
Yeah.
Like
you look at that stat where like I can't remember the last time he scored a 5-on-5 goal. It was like halfway through last season. And that's got to weigh on that would weigh on anyone. And so
I feel like a lot of the flack that Petey gets is because of body language. And, like I think there's too much reading into that as to whether he cares or whether he's reacting in the right fashion to whatever criticism, or as Elliot Friedman calls it, noise, or whatever his own internal expectations are. I think that's just that's just how he is. I mean, even if he was playing well, he's got that really kind of emotionless look to him. So, that's probably not helping his case. I mean, I don't know what's better. Like if he's not playing well and he's having a hissy fit, smashing his stick all over the place, but still not producing. I mean, is that really better? I don't know.
We went through this, but we went through that one with JT Miller a couple seasons ago, and everyone was going off.
That's what I mean
on him there.
Yeah.
And then you also look at Quinn Hughes, the ultimate sad face. Yeah. But he's playing well and he's producing. So there is this weird psychoanalyzing of things that I just don't think it's honestly, I don't think it's appropriate, because I don't think anything about these players or anything like that. Yeah. And while I get it because it's emotional fans, I just don't know if it's it just comes across weird to me. If PD is putting more pressure on himself because he's consuming all the noise in the market, that's not the best, but he's got to find a way to work through it. I think the Sedins had a bit of a trouble going through it at the beginning, and then they found a way.
That's just human nature too, and I believe Elliot Friedman when he thinks that PD is among the type of players that's well aware of what's being said about him. I think most pro athletes are of that sort,
and that is a theory. And I think that's one thing that it was interesting that I saw when this discourse this week after Friedman and the 32 Thoughts came out, and he posed his theory. It started being talked about as if it was fact. We don't know. We don't know what exactly everything's going on. But if that is the case, I'm sure the Sedins are right there, and I'm sure they're working with him. And there's not two guys who know. There's no two better guys to know exactly what he's going through.
Yeah.
We talked about the amplification of social media and everything, and the media landscape now. So it is a little bit different, but they went through the same. They went through the expectations and everything of being a top picks for the Vancouver Canucks, and how it took them a little bit longer to get to their peak, but when they did, they were fantastic. And maybe Petey got to the top, not necessarily his peak, but got to maybe a first plateau a little quicker than they did, and now he's still struggling, but I still think he can get there. And I think I know as tough as it is to say, and I know that there'll be many fans that will swear at me for saying this, but you need to have some patience with him, and you need to look for the little wins with him and all that. I know it's he's making 11 something million dollars a year, and you need him to perform at that level.
Yeah.
If the Canucks can get him there and consistently performing at that level halfway through this season, and going into the stretch run and hopefully the playoffs playing at that level, that's a win.
Into bigger context, if you compare the Sedins at the age that PD's currently at compared to the Sedins at that same age, PD has, like you suggested, Sean, he kind of hit a higher tier at an earlier time in his career, so maybe the expectations shot up a little bit higher than what they should be. But as far as like what age he's at compared to the Sedins at that same age, he's outperformed them. We'll find out if that arc, trajectory kind of stays the same way over the length of his entire career and where it tracks compared to the Sedins. But at this point, he's had more goals and more points than either of the Sedins at that same point.
I know it's cliche to say trust the process, but that's what I'm hoping is the case with Elias Pettersson, because when he came in, he had sort of his style, his somewhat unique way of doing things. He trusted that, and he was getting great results. He's not going to blow you away with speed or size or physicality, but creativity and his shot, those things, he was trusting them, and they were working. And it seems like he's gotten away from all of that. And getting it back is a lot easier said than done. But he's got to trust trying to have success his way, as opposed to trying to remake his game into something he's not suited for. And that can then just really cloud the brain when you got all that sort of analysis going on, And I suspect there's been some of that, and maybe over time we're starting to see that go away a little bit, and he just needs to start finding the net a few times, and I think the floodgates will open. But it has been a while, and that's why people have those concerns.
Yeah. And I think we will tackle the incident just briefly here. Teammates fight. Teammates have like Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland had a bit of a scrum in preseason or early last season, and they're like best friends now.
Yeah.
I remember, and I'm pretty sure Kessler and Bieksa have had more issues and being called, both of them calling each other babies and other worse words throughout their career, and they're totally fine. It
happens in adult recreational sports context where you got guys that are at each other's throats once in a while. I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it. I've had to get in between a couple guys and they'd be like, "Hey, we're on the same team here. What are we doing?" This is that competitiveness. It's going to happen. It's just more magnified when there's a bunch of media watching.
And like Sean said in our group chat earlier, like competitive hockey players are competitive 99.9% of the time. So even if it's in practice, there might be some friction that happens, but hopefully they kind of grow from it and they use it to their benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of too many cases where it sent the team in a downward spiral and hasn't been productive in some fashion. So it's really a non-story, but when it happens in front of the media, they're going to report it, and that'll generate a bit of a new cycle of discussion around it. But to read anything into that is just silly.
Let me put it this way: it shows that they give a shit. It shows that they care.
Yeah. Yes, that's the main thing, right? Like, what's worse is when a team's struggling and it's lifeless out there in practice. I mean, that's everybody's totally checked out in that case.
Yeah, and again, another good example is just go watch the first episode of the Prime series where they're following around Nylander and Pasternak. Nylander's mic'd up and he's basically calling both Matthews and Marner babies on the bench in the middle of a game. It happens.
That's not the slightest bit concerning, is it? Yeah, but it's going to happen. Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's just you'd have to you'd want to know the full context of that. But sometimes when you got somebody that's down on themselves and they need a little kick in the butt to stop being a baby, you're going to hear those words.
Yep.
It's meant to be constructive. It's not meant to be tearing your teammates down. People see
it's just meant as a kick in the ass to motivate you a little.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Even if it pisses you off, like it'll motivate you.
Yeah.
You're allowed to step back a little bit, but it's meant for a good purpose.
Yes. All right, and then just one more thing on the Canucks before we move on to a couple broader NHL points. Abbotsford home opener is tomorrow night, Friday, the 25th of October, and so what's interesting is Branstrom and Archie Baines got sent down today. I wouldn't be surprised if they both play tomorrow in that home opener. but this is where having the Abbotsford so close to Vancouver, they're both on homestands for the next little bit here. They can send Arshdeep Bains and Eric Brandstrom down, accrue some cap space now that they are out of LTIR, and then they can call them up for the road trip if they want. Like, that's great. And also, if you're in the area, you want to go see some good hockey, AHL is fantastic.
Yeah,
I unfortunately just couldn't make it work to see the Abbotsford Canucks when they opened the season here in Calgary, but man, go AHL is good hockey.
and the Canucks don't play till Saturday again too. So in terms of getting them, some more playing time and accruing the cap space, I mean, everything lines up really nicely here in that regard.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
All right, and then NHL, broader NHL news. Frozen Frenzy on Tuesday. Did you guys?
Yes, the second annual Frozen Frenzy.
Much of it?
No, just the Canucks game. Actually, no. Flipped on the Oilers in between periods, and the staggered start time sure does make that convenient. I don't think the broadcasters care much for having their intermission commercials skipped over for another game, but yes, it does make it easy to flip on to another game and check out what's going on there. It's too bad that there isn't some way that ESPN and Sportsnet can get together to make this a thing on both sides of the border. I don't know all the logistics that go into that. I've seen some commentary about, why are they doing it on a Tuesday? Well, people seem to forget it's hard to find a time that all 16 teams can play with building availability. So that's a challenge. It's also an ESPN event. So it means they can't be having basketball on that night or some other events. So it's tricky to do. We've kind of kicked around amongst ourselves some ideas how if they wanted to make it a regular thing, how we think it should go, and ideally be on a Saturday and not have all of the 8 game or all of the 16 games staggered apart. It is fun once in a while, and for the casual hockey fan who has the ESPN Plus in the US and can tune into that, they get a good sample of everything going on around the league.
Yeah, obviously there's going to be a little bit of imperfections and stuff that they learn along the way. This is only the second time they've done it, but hopefully, at some point they might like you were saying, Tyler. It's complicated logistics, so hopefully they at some point can maybe find a better groove. But ultimately, I think it's a cool idea, and it'll probably improve over time.
Yeah, like I said, I would love to see some sort of red zone situation north of the border, like they had down in with ESPN down in the States. I would love to see that up here in Canada for the next time they do a Frozen Frenzy like that, because that's just that was fun. That was fun. Like on Sundays, I definitely like have red zone on depending on what games are on. These what games I have access to and what games I want to watch. But it's still being able to toss it around to different things. Oh, that this team's on a power play. That'd be and then it would be. I like the idea. I think there's some fine tuning to go through. And I said, don't have to have every game staggered by 15 minutes, but it does draw eyes, I think, and it does draw some intrigue, and also
it doesn't have to be all 32 teams playing if they want to make this very well. It would not. If they're going to make this a regular thing, then it's not it's not practical to have it be all 32 teams playing. But if you had some 2 or 3 time slots, and you had a certain number of games in each one of those, and then you just flip in between, that's basically what the NFL does.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, the NFL, the morning slot is all at one start time, and then the afternoon slot has 2 different start times. So I think in 20 minutes apart. Yeah, you've got the 2:05 and then the 2:25. So 1:05 and 1:25 in BC. So I don't mind that, but it's just I don't think the all this staggering is necessarily needed. but it's still very
You know,
fun.
one thing that NFL quietly did this year is set up the schedule such that there's at least 3 games in that late afternoon Eastern time window, as opposed to 2 or only 1 game. And I think that has something to do with it, you know, the red zone and trying to get more people to sign up for that, and try to boost the popularity of that. But they have made sure that there's at least 3 games, if I've read that correctly, to provide that whip around viewing option. And ESPN, this is part of what they do with their core programming. You've seen this with their most famously with Monday Night Football now, where they have the Mannings on ESPN2 as an alternative viewing option, and they've done similar things like that with Sunday Night Baseball, and this is a form of it with hockey, where they've got their games that they're showing in the regular conventional fashion, and then they've got an alternative offering, and they must be pretty happy with the combined viewership totals there, because you know, they're pretty invested in it.
And like, as far as a comparison between the two sports, like, I feel like it's a cool concept that hockey is trying to mimic to a degree, but I feel like the red zone concept definitely works better with football. Like, you can definitely, like Sean was talking about with like power plays and stuff like that. Like, there's certain aspects of hockey that kind of can maybe work in that regard, but I feel like there's no like surefire way of like, oh, they are like a minute away from potentially scoring a goal here. Like, hockey, I feel like scoring can happen more momentary at any time, whereas football, it's a little bit more predictable. So yeah, like, it's not going to be like a perfect apples to apples, like when you try and like copy and paste into a different sport. But I appreciate the attempt at it.
And I think that's why you don't need all 32 teams playing 16 games. You can
it's almost
have 2 or 3 games go at once. You can work it that way, and then you're not necessarily missing out on a lot. So it's not a perfect transition, but it's definitely something I think they can make work. It's not the first time that we've seen something like that. I know they have ice surfing on, like, I think it was a Sportsnet YouTube channel at one point, or was that the Score? There's multiple.
I think that was the Score. Yeah.
There's a few different iterations of them trying to do this, and I think it, like, right now, I think they especially in Canada, they need to bring it back. Speaking of that, I believe actually on Amazon Prime, on Prime TV, you can do that on Thursday nights. So it's definitely, they are trying that, and I think I hope that it can grow and build from that, because it's definitely something that I think is needed now in today's day and age, especially on busy nights, like on Saturday night. It should be like Sportsnet should have this on a Saturday night, because usually Saturday nights have like at least 8 to 10 games, right? So.
Well, with the upcoming renewal of the Canadian TV rights here fairly soon, we'll see if maybe that is part of it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the new negotiations for the new contract goes, and like how many companies are going to be in on it, because we were talking about like when Rogers got this one last time, like how that was going to affect TSN and if they were still going to be like in for bidding once it expired and stuff like that. But now with like streaming being as big of a thing and Amazon getting Monday night rights and that sort of thing, it's definitely going to be a very interesting situation to see how that next contract plays out.
Speaking of Amazon, I know we didn't put this on the agenda, but I haven't seen really much of the 2 Prime Video games that they've shown so far on Monday nights. But any impressions from you guys? Have you caught any of that?
The one thing I really like about them is that before the actual broadcast goes live, they just have sort of B-roll of like the warm-ups and in the arena, and that's very cool. It's one of those things that you kind of lose when you're just watching on TV. Just that feel of being in the arena, it kind of adds that. And
I thought that was nice too. Yeah.
And then I do like the fact that they have the panel like sort of in the concourse, in the arenas. And again, it helps you feel the energy. And again, it's something that you don't get in these studio panels, or if you're, say, like Vancouver's got their sort of their panel up in Rogers Arena up above everything.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily feel the energy as well as you do down in the concourse. I know it's tough to find a way to do it. I don't know if they'll be able to do that in all arenas, depending on like if they come to Calgary. I don't know if where they could set that up without it.
Yeah, it's pretty tight there in the Saddle Dome, isn't it? Yeah.
So I don't know if that's again something that can happen in all arenas, but I do like that the two games they've had at the Bell Center in Montreal, and then the why is it Air Canada Center, or am I
Scotiabank Arena? Yes.
Scotiabank Arena. Like I'm a sponsor behind.
Yes.
So you got two of the most like hot and rabid fan bases in the league. So you do have that, but I feel like you should be able to feel that in most arenas if you can find a way to make it work.
One thing that Amazon's learned from other experiences to having streaming services put on sporting events is that they do add their own sort of creative flair to it, but they don't reinvent the wheel. The actual presentation of the game is pretty straightforward with experienced broadcasters. You're getting what you'd expect, a national level broadcast, I think, without too many bells and whistles to sort of distract from the experience. And I haven't seen any of the panel. I would imagine it's probably not knocking anybody's socks off. Canuck fans will be thrilled when they have Mark Messier showing up at some point later in the season. I know.
That's really my only major issue with it, is that they're subjecting me to Mark Messier.
Yeah, and our friend of the show, Ricky Dollywall, will it'll be interesting the first time the Canucks are on Prime. We'll look forward to hearing about that. But otherwise, it's been pretty solid with John Forsland on play-by-play and the analysts they've had, and Andy Petrillo covering hockey again. And one thing about streaming services is the picture quality is good. Like it's not compressed, and it's good to see. But at Apple, like with their baseball coverage, they did a lot of reinventing of the wheel and went with unusual commentary booth teams and kind of irritated fans with that. And I think that's a good start to a new broadcast. Don't annoy the viewer. just let them consume the product, and then you can kind of make some tweaks as you go.
Yeah, give them mostly what they want, but slightly tweak it, not try and change it from the get-go. Yeah, absolutely.
It's I've heard this with brewing. Actually, it's like if you want to tweak a recipe on a beer, make 1,000 small tweaks so that when you get there, they don't
really notice it.
The consumer doesn't notice that you've changed it. So, but it's just make sure that the people who are in Canada can watch it. Sportsnet.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Still salty about that, Sean, eh?
I believe that'd be audience relations at sportsnet.ca.
But other than that, I know we had one more thing on the agenda, but I think that's good for tonight. It's still, like I said, it's 6, 7, 8 games into the season. The only other thing on the agenda was surprises and disappointments. But guess what? We can talk about that next week when
let's
save
that one
into the season.
I think that'd be a more appropriate
American Thanksgiving, I feel is like a more appropriate time to have that conversation.
Yeah. Well, even next week, but to say game is sorry, Calgary Flames fans.
I mean, they look. Last time I looked, it looked like they have fallen off the fallen off the high. And the last time I saw it was 3-0 Carolina. It's 3-1. They got closer.
There you go.
So
Yeah.
All right. How do we follow everyone?
I'm on x.com at tnoble, Tnoble.
I am on all the social medias at Schneids, SCHNEIDZ.
I am on the app formerly known as Twitter at BeardedConnect03. You can follow us, the podcast, at Shifts and Pucks on X, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you next time. Bye for now.